To the final session, the final day of the SCORES Poetry Summit, Words in Action. My name is Angela Bailey. I'm coming to you from the Bay Area, part of the America SCORES Bay Area crew, where we work with over 60 different school sites in order to provide free soccer, poetry, and service learning programs for youth. Across the country, we're in over 11 different cities, working to make sure we have free programs for over 12,000 young poet athletes. And we call them poet athletes because they are learning life lessons and how to express themselves on the field, off the field, wherever the need may be. So excited to bring you this final session. We could not have picked a better poet, activist, speaker, creative, such a beautiful, beautiful poet that we have for you this morning, Tongo Eisen-Martin. Thank you for being here, Tongo. Before we begin, I must give a couple shout outs. First to the organizing committee, Alicia Yano, Tamsin Smith, Dean Rader, and our CEO, Colin Schmidt, for putting this incredible lineup together. Snaps to you guys for bringing it all home. Thank you very much. And of course, to our corporate sponsors, we have the SAC Brand Group and Soma Equity Partners. Let's be real, we couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much for providing this forum for us to bring our communities together. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to Tongo. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning, Tongo. Take it away.
Much love and appreciation. Well, you can tell by my tires that not everybody who's driven with me is still alive. Also, that I like my drinks neat bottled and in a bus stop. Also, that we're drowning in precinct paper, department store floor plans, and applications to the moon. We can change the color of our snot from gifted to heart attack and tell you about ashes, but where all these angels coming from, smelling like the cigarette that fails. And why is the man on the safe side, these headlights freezing up? You got nothing to say at my funeral, I'll speak on your behalf. Heroin in my smile. Mountain made a flatland robbery among some things on my mind. The last door run in the name of shared afterlife, Friday to the filter, I'm a tall tale on earth. But here's to that angel that never appeared to America. And a night of dog paddle and a batch of hangovers looking for a home. You know, a liar wouldn't have lived this long. That's my humor when fences speak. On a pair of rambling dice that got unique tempers and young souls that say, shut up about our city. Here, title must crash over a coast while lie. The street's teeth are in pieces. It's reservoir art on the faces of stragglers. The sad news from back home to me, we have to grow up on his behalf. Stumble back to a car full of last stand. The truth is stale, but still liquor. Mission Street would be proud of me. I'm a mural man. I'm also organized. Remember when my lungs would wake up last walking all morning? If it was worth it, man, I'm 3 decades homeless. The reservoir art is all I ever see. And I'm 2,000 miles from my first fight. Maybe no one really survived. Maybe I wrote my first poem for no reason. You know, apparently too much of San Francisco was not there in the first place. This dream requires more condemned Africans. To put another way, state violence rises down. Or still life is just getting warmed up. Or army life is looking for a new church and ignored all other suggestions. Or folktale writers have not made up their minds as to who is gonna be their friends. You know, this is the worst downtown yet. And I've borrowed a cigarette everywhere. I've taken many a walk to the back of a bus that led on out the back of a storyteller's prison sentence, then on out the back of slave scars, but this is my comeback phase. I left my watch on the public bathroom sink and took the toilet with me. Threw it at the first bus I saw, eating single mothers half alive. It flew through the bus line number and on out the front of the White House, and hopefully you find comfort downtown, but if not, we brought you enough cigarette filters to make a decent winter coat. A special species of handshake, let's all know who's king. What's the lifespan of uniform cloth? This coffin needs to quit acting like those are birds singing. Rusty nails have no wings, have no voice other than that of a white world dying in book pages in the gas pump. Catchy, isn't it? The way 3 nooses is the rule, or the way potato sack masks go so well with radio codes, or the way condemned Africans fought their way back to the ocean only to find waves made the 1920s burnt up piano parts, European backdoor deals, and red flowers for widows who spend all day in the sun mumbling in San Francisco. Red flowers, but what's the color of a doctor visit there? Book titles in the streets, book titles like Hero, you make a better zero, or Hey Fur Coat Lady, the president is dead, or Pay Me Back in Children, or They hung up their bodies in their own museums, and other book titles pulled from a drum solo. Run here, hero. Lied the hiding place. All the bullets in 10 precincts know where to go. There's no heaven nor any other good idea in the sky. Politics means that people did it and people do it. Understand that when in San Francisco and other places that was never really there. I bet this ocean thinks it's an ocean, but it's not. It's just 6th and Mission Street. I don't know who's king, king of thin things. You know, like America, I'm proud to deserve to die. I'm gonna eat my dinner extra slow tonight in this police state candy dispensary you all call a neighborhood. No set of manners goes unpunished. Never mind the murderers, insomnia, or the tea kettle preparing everyone for police sirens. I go to the railroad tracks and follow them to the station of my enemies. A cobalt-toothed man pitches pennies at my mugshot negative. All over the United States, there are toddlers in the rock. I see why everyone out here got in a big cosmic basket and why blood agreements mean a lot and why it gets shot back at. I understand the psycho-spiritual refusal to write white history to take the glass freeway. White skin tattooed on my right forearm, ricochet sewers near where I collapsed into a rat-infested manhood. My new existence is living graffiti. In the kitchen with a lot of gun cylinders to hack up. House of God in part, no cops in part. My body brings down the Christmas. The new bullets pray over the blankets made from the old bullets, pray over the 28th hours next beauty mark, extrajudicial Confederate statue restoration, the waistband before the next protest post. Hey, by the way, time is not an illusion, Your Honor. I will save your deaths for last. You are witty, Your Honor. You're moving money again, Your Honor. Hey, it is only rated one thing. Non-white cops and prison guard shadows reminded me of spoiled milk floating on an oil spill in the neighborhood, making a lot of fuss over his demise. A new Lake Fort Black Panther Party, Malcolm X's ballroom jacket slung over my son's shoulder, the figment of village, a new noose to a new white preacher, all in an abstract painting of a president. It bought slavery some time, didn't it? The tangent speeches of military boats on election Tuesday cars, a cold blood study and leg irons proof that some white people have actually fondled nooses. And sundown couples made their vows of love over opaque peach plastic and bolt action audiences. The Medgar Evers second is definitely my favorite law of science. Fondled news clippings and primitive Methodists, my arm changes imperialisms, simple policing versus structural frenzies, elementary school script versus even wider white spectrum of artless bleeding and the challenge of watching civilians think of terrible rituals they have around the corner. They let their elders beg for public mercy. I'm gonna go ahead and sharpen these kids' heads and their ears myself and see how much gravy spills out of family crest. Modern fans war well with their t-shirt poems and t-shirt guilt and me having on the cheapest pair of shoes on the bus. I have no choice but to read the city walls, the signs of my life. You know, a tour guide through your robbery. I also am. A cigarette saying, look what I did about your silence. Ransom water and box spring gold, this decade is only for accent grooming, I guess. Ransom water and box spring gold, the corner store must die. What games, I guess? All these tongues from this junk? You know, the start of mass destruction begins and ends in restaurant bathrooms and some people use and other people clean. Are you telling me it's a rag in the sky? Waiting for you, yes. We've written the same, we set a stage, man, we should have fit in. We're our jobs at the communists, but now more corridor and hallway have walked into our lives. Now the whistling is less playful and the barbed wire overcrowded too, my dear. If it is not a city, it is a prison. If it has a prison, it is a prison, not a city. When the courtyard talks on behalf of military issue, all walks take place outside of the body, man. Dear life to your left, the medieval painting to your right. And that really makes an impression. Crowd people living in thin air, you have 5 minutes to learn how to see through this breeze. When the mask goes sideways, barbed wire becomes the floor, barbed wire becomes the roof, 40 feet into the sky becomes out of bounds. When a mask breaks in half, mind which way the eyes go. Did you know they killed the world for the sake of giving everyone the same backstory? We watching Gary, Indiana fight itself into the sky, old pennies for that wind feeling you get before the hood goes up and over your headache, pennies that stick together, mocking all aspirations. I mean, stuck together pennies was the first newspaper I ever read, along with the storefront dwelling army that always lets us down, where the Holy Spirit favors the backroom souls in a situation that offer 100 ways to remain a loser. Souls watching the clock open, their eyes don't lie to sad people. What was we talking about again? The narrator asked the graveyard at 10 minutes flat, said the graveyard, the funeral only took 10 minutes. Man, never tell that to anyone again. Are you just gonna pin the 90s on me? All 30 years of them? And why should I know the difference between sleep and satire? The pyramid of corner stores fell on our heads. We died right away. That building wants to climb up and jump off another building. These are downtown decisions. Somewhere on this planet, this August 7th, we running down the rust thinking one more needs to come with me, man. What evaporated on Earth so that we could be sent back down? A conductor of minds in a citywide symphony, waving souls to sing. He also is, you know, a lot of God can happen in 3 seconds. And not much heaven, no. You know, here's a man before a fight, a leave me alone type character, emerging from the penniless death of a one-way street fiction. You know, that's a fancy way of saying, I'm gonna make it even if I have to drive backwards. All I have is chord changes and 1,000 backhands, driving the street like I'm choking, a car full of nephews. Hasn't been a son since November, and it hasn't been a street I can't choke to death. You know, this city better back down. Hey, you see this gun on the table? And something about staring until it all feels stable. Why wouldn't I protect everyone? All my death sleep late. My son better be quick. My daughter better shoot first because we vote for no one. You know, we vote for nothing. Okay, the first thing you'll feel is the heat. This lady would tell me, yeah, trying to tell me about possession, drink like need, what I'm most to hear. And most of the world leaves me alone. To breathe small like a giant, to go to jail every once in a while when the genocide kicks up in late May, when politicians have too easy a time, I'm gassing backwards out of one-way street in honor of myself and in honor of you, if you understand the nature of the world. How long I've been just like my father, a real resemblance says the anxiety of the neighborhood. This is a crossroad or a crossroads narrative. So much crossroads, people get in the habit of turning back, turn back when they find themselves remembering me, but not my last words, a man before a fight. You'll feel the heat. But there's nothing to keep in mind, there's nothing to remember. Really, there's nothing to be. There's just like this moment, then another, then stare, then it all becomes stable, then the table let's go fuzzy, and Friday's an unfamiliar face peeking in the window. It's cool to panic for a second. Composure is wasted on you worst enemies. People are marked on that sidewalk. You the only thing life size. Everybody knows this in the wire hanger empire. When the blood stops walking, that feeling isn't father enough to be permission to fold. You better swing one more time. That father you was rose from the grave and said, just give me 5 more minutes. He said, running water is a myth. It's us who are running up, down, and all alongside this water. And people don't rise from the grave. And not lay down neither. It's us who flip all around their bodies. So beware when the people around you all look like they're about to jump, it might be your time. You feel the heat. And when 4 walls demand to be 4 walls, and the earth outside moves, don't panic. Don't try to recreate the earth outside. Don't tell jokes to yourself. Don't even talk disrespectfully to the 4 walls. Instead, unclench your fist and walk away. It might be heaven if you understand the nature of the world. From a 2-floor skyline, an abandoned house once talked to me. He said, young man, you are heroic and 10 years old. Among 20 generations of friends, your friends will free fall away. They will free fall up. They will free fall to walls with 5th grade speed to industrial paint behind secondhand fences. Young man, use quick knife tones, be bone and brass, be last laugh music. You're always leaving, always want to change your clothes from the door of life and escape. A 2-floor skyline said, you're the guy that dies in the middle, the friend more blues than skin, the face the cheap hotel schizophrenics can place with their 90-mile-per-hour right eyes among dry heat killers once children 3 feet high and roaming and repeating and aiming at cotton mirrors and hang on breathing walls. You were 10 years old, tagging along, yawning at well-lit violence, whistling 2-shop songs. You would be useful. You would be high and alone, flying on a nephew dragon from a $20 family in the sky that calls itself just more soil. Around walls that are just walls, except these walls suggest you make wives out of highs and currency. Here the air is polite to sleepy glass and bullying walls. Young man, you will come to admit that sometimes suicide is power because some people live stronger as ghosts. And sometimes the afterlife empties billions of souls into objects like playground bullets and abandoned door frames, even broken glass and poop. It has voice too. In 24 hours behind your back, look over your shoulder right now. Can you hear it? The sound of drums punching themselves out, the sound of piano parts learned in between assassinations attempts, be bone and brass, be bone enough for 2 souls, be invincible again. Suffer red-eyed accents, professional fingertips, gifted victim, 6 in the morning, beer the first month of probation, to shout at the wall, see these words that shouldn't be home, look behind you again, be invincible again, be Winwood, be a sad machete, be your son, be a thief, steal his back, laugh too long, never look away. The afterlife will empty and walk you home. First, I should have apologized to the souls of the house because, I'm wearing the cheekbones of the mask only. Like a pill bottle whose name is yours, name tagged on the side of a factory of bricks. Teeth of the mask now. Back of the head of the mask now. A new phase of anti-anthropomorphism, fending for real faces. Stuck with one of those cultures that believes I chose this family. I'm not creative, just the silliest of the revolutionaries. My blood drying on my only jacket, the police state psychic middleman evangelizing for the creation of an unmasked and unmet good blood of a lamb, less racialized, but awesome prison sentence. Good guy. A right angle made between a point on a Louisiana plantation and a 5-year-old's rubber ball 3 feet high and falling like a deportee plane to complete my interpretation of garden variety genocide. I am small talk about loving your enemies a little more realistically, about paper tigers, and also gold. I need my left hand back. Broke my neck on a piano key, found paradise in a fist fight. Maybe I should check into the Cuba line. Watching the universe's last metronome, some call black jacket. Just wait. These religions will start resigning in a decade or two. Some colorfully, some transactionally, in a cotton gothic society, class betrayal going glasses. I mean, ironically, my window started fogging over too, as I was trying to figure out which Haiti would get me through the winter, which poem houses souls, which socialist breakthroughs. Breakthroughs like taking 10 steps back and then finally trying stillness, like introducing Gabriel Prosser to Thelonious Monk. And I remember childhood. Remember the word childhood being a beginning. Scribbling on an amazing grace, I rented this body from some circumference of slavery. Remember being kicked out the Midwest, strange food theater, lithium in circuses, like-minded stomachs, the ruling class blessing their blank checks with levy phone, with opioid tea, sentient dollar bills, yelling to each other, pocket to pocket, cello stands in the precinct for accompanying counter-revolutionaries. My mother raised me with a simple pain. The poet loses his mind. You know, like the room has weather, or first girlfriend gravity. The difference between me and you is that the madness wants me forever. A pair of apartments defining both my family and political composure. Books behind my back, bail money paved into the streets plan. Euphoria cliche. Bracing for the medicine's recoil, sharing a dirty deli sandwich with my friend. Black Jacobins, underground topography of a grandmother's hand. Psychology of the mask now. Teeth of the mask again. I talk facing away from the dead. They replace me with the change in my pocket. A penny that's yet to be invented. They say, you have to know how to cut a throat on the way to cutting a throat. After sleeping on a mattress made from 2 garbage bags of clothes, I became content with the small gestures of plantation fires. I mean, playing with couch ashes, I realized how weird the universe was. It exists in so many places, so many random things. It interrupts me while I'm trying to dream, like your clay correspondence, Lord. To be transparent, I have 20 books next to a bullet, like an old man giving advice at the beginning of a revolution. I've really done it, Lord. Explored the mumbles of my mind, explored what's naturally there, and I found no brainwashing, man. I found Africa, Lord. I have a future. It takes place in the diasporic South. I have morning possessions, modern militancy. I mean, windows to the South. I'll walk on a missile for food. I guess you will not want flowers for a few years, Lord. Will I be tied face to face with the country I murder, merge with the slaughter? Old metal versus new metal, old metal versus a pool of meandering imperialist faces, a multiculturalism of sorts. You know, they replaced me with a comedian's chest cavity. Instead of a chest cavity held tight, it takes a violent middleman for me to talk to myself. Stories that travel through other people's stories, you know, like a song about a song, or a hemisphere about a hemisphere, stories that travel through a conquered poet. My mother remembers Africa, Lord. She killed on behalf of you, Lord. I wore a machete all winter and no one asked me what it meant. I read 1,000 books in front of the world. What I do is fight poems and sleep through decking in San Francisco prayer circles. Watch people play for post-working class associative services, recreations of a governor's desk, ruling class art of utility plan, find a sociopathic bureaucrat. They some white people scare even easier. TV in a basket next to a ceramic baby wearing ceramic armor, musket progeny fantasizing through the art of the poor. Their trendy latches locked before God. Black art hunted down like a dog and hand over my friends, Lord. Lord, I think I'm going down the water. Unelected white people in my small house, like a blue song of no spiritual effect, or dollhouse, H-bomb, a pony show near dead bodies, apartheid weddings that go right, apartheid white people give birth to mathematicians, the spiritual continuity of barracks and police stations, a chemical interpretation of a Sunday trip to church smells in their pockets, a river mistaken for a talking river, no autobiography outside of small personal victories of violence and drug use made in the image of God's trinkets, a white abolitionists confided in their children about chemical assurances that they will switch from black artists to white artists, from black guy to white guy, from black worker to white worker. I think about you cautiously, Lord. In the same way I think about my childhood, Lord. Foxhole Friday nights, most of life is new. The comedian points out a planet's field to a priest. King Sugarcane, King Cotton, King Revolutionary, the Bible Essential, containing all modes of shallow introduction, introducing. An unlisted planner class speaking about fevers and balance sheets and reassuring the masses that we can figure out our fathers later. You know, a priest took my mother lightly, Lord. Stood in front of parishioners, regrabbing fantasies about black art. Priest reading confidently before I broke him and broke his parallel. You know, after the day, I've never been a poet before. A little brother watches his big brother's friends. You know, they lean rifles on sheltered walls. They agree with me and call it literature. It's a simple matter, this revolution thing. To really lie to no one. to keep nothing godlike, to write a poem for God. Cool, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Wow, Tongo, I think we're all just breathing
All right, man.
after that. Give us a minute to digest. I mean, I can't put into words, how to respond to something like that. I can't even put a name on it. What we just saw there. I feel like I put my finger in an electrical socket and got slapped up the head the same time. But the energy that comes through those words, and what you're and the things that you're talking about, it's powerful. So I just was sharing the appreciation and let me ask. Let's just try to break that down a little bit for us. Or just come at this from a little bit of a different angle. And we invite people in the attendees watching too to please put your questions in, because we'll turn this into a dialogue, and maybe get I don't know if you can do another poem for us later. We'll see how it goes. But let me just break try to digest this a little bit. What is poetry?
Mm-hmm. Man, poetry is poetry it has 100 potentials. My favorite is the opportunity to see what your mind has to communicate when not tasked with survival. From the time we start crying, we understand if we emit sounds, we will get something we need, or influence events, and that evolves, especially or interestingly, for better or for worse, when we start communicating for some kind of social survival or social reproduction, or to reproduce the concept of myself, right? And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. And regular communication is, in a way, a kind of a beautiful kind of democratic shorthand of a way of sharing meaning. But now, what poetry is, when it's just you down in the kind of in the playground of your mind, with yourself and all of the conclusions that you've come to. Now we can see what else your mind, or what does your mind kind of want to say, and how does your mind want to say it when not tasked with that, when not tasked with that survival. So it's really just, again, it's just the opportunity to see what your mind can do with analyzing, analyzing reality, and also kind of commenting on the presentation of reality itself, which you could define language as. That's my favorite potential of poetry. But along the way, I got 100 of these because, along the way, and I think this goes for any craft, right? It's good to just keep a running dialogue going in your head as to what it is, that you're doing. So I'm going to ask myself several times, probably during the course of a day, well, what is poetry? Why did the poems end, 3 minutes ago, and now a different kind of communication has begun? Answering these type of questions actually get stitched into what I do next with the craft, And I think that's what we all do with our main preoccupations, is just keep defining for ourselves and letting that definition then influence our evolution, our journey in it.
Yeah. And let me ask from this perspective, what is the role of the of the poet? What is the role of the San Francisco Poet Laureate? How do you see that?
Hey, right on. Well, you know, the role of the poet is really much better than the role of the poet laureate, man. You know, I think like, man, who the poet is actually beautifully the nobody, and in kind of and in really integrating a kind of a nobody's psyche, you can then like become everybody on the page, or take any position or camera angle, you know. And so in a way, like the poet is like, we're, you know, and it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be this deep, but at least there's an opportunity to kind of subtitle the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's I think, you know, that interestingly to this kind of this position I've kind of wandered into, it's almost a little antithetical to trying to be almost like a psyche of position. But you know, with the San Francisco Poet Laureate, you know, what's beautiful about it, it's actually like a collective improvisation. My favorite part is just working with the library. You know, the position itself operates through the library, and you know, that's a beautiful pirate ship, you know, and so it's just, you know, whatever we can imagine, you know, they're down for it. And then along the way, you know, any other kind of any other entity, institution, group, you know, that wants to collaborate. That's you know, that's a beautiful thing. I'm always down for. But what I hope for it to look like is a lot of education, you know, a lot of educational projects or of, you know, whatever scale, and some, you know, along with the curation of just providing platforms for other poets and writers and anybody really, thinkers, revolutionaries, to also kind of like just make this leverage collective on whatever platform I can like help provide. But it's like it really is kind of just we all make it up as we go along. Yeah.
Tongo, you had hosted an amazing session earlier last week with the fire and the word.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do a commercial for that session. It's you know, we have that on the replays here for people to see. But could you just tell a little bit about that session and those poets? Those you know, again, I had the same feeling watching some of that, or listening to that poetry as the electrical socket. You know, I felt the fire.
Yeah.
But could you just say a little bit about that session and those poets?
Yeah. So oh man, I hope I don't leave any of them out, but everybody should know their names. So I believe it was Joyce Lee, Darius Simpson, Michael Quest Moore, Matt Cedillo, Lady Rev. Oh, was there one more? Oh, forgive me if there was one more that I'm blanking on.
I think that was it.
They were right on. They're the most fearless poets I know, and poets that I met along the way, not in the kind of not in the various trenches of poetry and movement work. And that's what I treasure about them. You'll find them, you know, you'll really find them in the field. and so I just wanted them to share, to share their craft, and then also tell us, well, what are we looking at? I mean, because we find ourselves in some kind of, in a real science fiction, or what really looks like, the preamble to what could be a terrible epoch, depending on how we enter it. That, like, we can no longer kind of passively participate in the historical process. I think that's what these times are evidence of. That if people who would put humanity first continue to approach reality as if it's just an individual adventure, then these other kind of insane forces are going to continue to run amok, like, that neo-Confederate tendency that we saw do that performance art in the Capitol building on January 6th, like this medical apartheid that's being facilitated right now, and it's disproportionately killed people of color, not just with the pandemic, but like we didn't have a sun for a couple days, with the past fire season. The smoke literally took out the sky. So what we're saying is, like, there's no sideline in the historical process. And so I was, we just wanted to hear their kind of prescriptions of what's going on and what needs to happen. I think those poets are, beautiful examples of both just like super brave and brilliant poetry, along with a kind of a commitment to praxis. Poets that are, are not shy about entering the historical process critically.
Brave and brilliant, no doubt about it. The other session, you were generous with your time. You contributed to was the youth versus apocalypse.
Yeah.
And when you see somebody like that, young 15-year-old, and her, the folks that she gathered. I mean, could you just talk a little bit about that, and when you see it coming from a young age, like what's that mean to you?
Yeah, I'm blanking on what's her last name, Ania. I'm blanking on her last name, but it's look out, Butler. Look, pay attention, because she was definitely a leader ahead of her time, and I wager represents a collective of youth, who are kind of like evidence that the world is not coming to an end, because when these kind of kids wouldn't come along if the universe was done with us. You know what I mean? But it was a beautiful session. Just, we were just talking about just kind of the dance between both being a poet and a movement worker, and we came, I think we came to some really soulful conclusions. Also, speaking about the next generation of genius, I'm blanking on his last name, so I'm so bad with names, but Samuel,
Get at you.
Right. That like what kind of James Baldwin that cat is gonna make is gonna be scary. Because he's, if we could liken this to, a martial art or something, like his kung fu is crazy for such an early age, so definitely check it out so you can see the giants of the future. You know, get in on the ground floor.
Yeah, totally inspirational in many ways. So I know on the call here today, we've got teachers, educators, the America Scores. We have a lot of our coaches on here who are working with even younger students, third, fourth, fifth grade, and trying to inspire the poetry and that self-expression to get it down and get it out. What, how do you teach poetry, or what can you say to, scores, people like scores coaches who are trying to help younger children, students find their voice?
Yeah, you would be surprised how, how kind of how almost like what seems like would be too complicated for kids is actually just as plain, as it would be for folks a little older. I mean, I think they can handle, just again the truth of the potentials of poetry. But when I recently talked to elementary school, which is, not my not my track and field event, but we're seeing the kind of what we're seeing to work was just, likening poetry just to the opportunity to just, just tell us what you think. Just poetry is how you tell us what's on your mind, and just start from that position. But yeah, I think too, that the angle that we learn, that you have to bring to me with me. You have to bring the social reality into it. It's not like, poetry in a vacuum. It's not them thinking in a vacuum. It's them thinking in an oppressive society. And it therefore, you can think about poetry, writing anything really, writing, any kind of writing, as the power of naming and letting them know that that's where oppression actually begins, with taking that power away. When you don't have the power to name your world and you don't have the power to name yourself, you're living at the whim of someone else. And so it's important, to use and to cultivate that power of just naming things. And that's an interesting, almost political triumph. Just in that, just in that commitment, in that mental commitment, there is liberation, or at least the beginning of a liberation process. So also framing it that way, just like, through these poems, you're going to name yourself. Through these poems, you're going to name the world, however you want, just in doing it. All of our liberation is there, That's another angle I take.
I've got a couple of questions coming in, which I'll share here. I don't know if you're seeing them, but name liberation, right? This is the end game, really. I believe, right? Yeah, but what does that mean to you? What is liberation? What is that vision?
I'm from the old school, man. So liberation. You have to reorg. I mean, there's two kind of main, two major projects have to happen. One, you have to reorganize the realities of production, or all the processes, everything that happens from natural resource extraction or usually theft, you know what I mean, to product, right? Get from the ground to your, to your hands. That has to be transformed. Okay, to take, we have to take we have to take these profit motives out of life, and also have to take these processes of exploitation out of economy. And then also we're going to have to we have to dismantle these military industrial complexes as they exist, as they really just enforce a ruling class hegemony that almost just kind of guarantees and maintains exploitation. So, I think those are the two. But really, what's interesting is at the end of the day, I think liberation really comes down to a masses of people who find oppression unacceptable. Because though this reality is constructed with bullets and bombs, frankly, a lot of its maintenance does come down to a weird coerced but consent, nevertheless. And no matter how, like a system might seem big and bad, but it's just people organized in a certain way. And guess what? We're people too, and we can organize ourselves. And as soon as you have people, a mass of people who just will not accept a status quo like this one, a new kind of like a new day is actually you don't need a poet or anybody. You don't need anybody's like imagination. It's actually not that. It's not that big of. It's not that big a structural transformation. If if we dictate what these institutions are actually supposed to do. So it's not like we have to, just like imagine if all college was open admissions and free. We don't have to like reinvent college as a concept. Just make it all free. You know what I mean? Make it all free. And anybody, and education is a human right. Anybody can go and study anything they want. Why can't housing be free at this point? I mean, at this point, especially if you just look at how much wealth has been extracted through slave or slave-like labor. I think at this point, everyone on the planet can have some kind of reparation. You know what I mean? And we can kind of, or I guess what I'm voting for is we can have a Star Trek: The Next Generation type of society, but we have to change the current social relations of both production and monopolies of violence that are currently and been historically practiced.
Here's a question from Hamza, and you've touched on this, but it's a beautiful question, so I'm going to read it here. What you write about comes from a place of pure courage and empathy. What you shared is a direct threat to a structure that we operate within. How do you find the courage in yourself to speak up the way you do? And how do you find peace in the existing duality of living in this structure while needing to dismantle it?
I think there's, to work backwards, meditation. I really believe that you kind of have to stick to the basics of certain things. So like, poetry as a craft has the basics that I stick to, regiments, practices, and all that to stick to. Movement you know, kind of a revolutionary movement or praxis has a basics to stick to learn, to practice. And I think also spiritual cultivation, however you want to codify it, whatever kind of makes you a more compassionate person, both with yourself and with other people, is also kind of we do well to engage almost on its own terms. And so, you know, that kind of, again, whatever it is to you, whatever you can make habitual, that's what like I have to practice. But as I think, as far as, you know, just my output as a poet, I think it's just because it'll pain me worse to not tell the truth or to not engage reality like this than anything that might come as a result. I fear that more. It's not that I don't have fears, but I fear I fear not being. Basically, I fear being a tool of the ruling class. Worse than I fear confronting them. Yeah, I think that's what drives, what keeps me going, or what I'm held hostage by it.
Mm-hmm. We got another question here from Kimmy, who for the Poet Laureate from Alameda. We've had an excellent session also earlier in the week. I encourage people to check that out. Kimmy's question is, I mean, people can come on and ask these if they want. I'll kind of keep rolling, but if you want to come on, raise your hand. So Kimmy asks, so is the poet's role as poet and or teacher to envision the kinds of changes that lead to liberation?
I think that can happen along the way, but I wouldn't put that kind of pressure on the front end of your creativity. You know, again, I like to feed the organism the basics, or the separate food groups, and then if along the way we're able to imagine what the new day looks like, that's groovy. But I actually fear hybrid identities, and I fear because I fear comfort zones, right? That I fear, you know, someone, because if it's like, oh, I'm a revolutionary poet, and I just think to do, you know, what a revolutionary poet would do, I'm not doing everything that needs to happen, or everything I can do that needs to happen for, you know, this stage of organizing. And that's kind of the trap. I think what our generation's weakness is we try to be strong. We try to do what we're best at, instead of everything that's actually required of movement. And this goes even within movement culture itself, for people who don't even consider themselves poets. Some people, you know, some people really like their actually comfort zone is a protest, right? But you won't see them, you know, in a neighborhood knocking on doors, trying to get people to come to some kind of people's assembly or something like that. You know, or you'll have some people, you know, that love doing mutual aid, but you'll never see them in a political education class, whether taking it or teaching it, you know. And what's groovy is all of these are valid. The political education class, the mutual aid, the protests, all of this is valid. But you know, the problem is when everybody wants to just kind of clump up where they're most comfortable instead of looking objectively at conditions and saying, okay, we need to do this, this, and this. So similarly, I think, especially the artist is in the modern artist is kind of in danger, and actually can only imagine so much when you don't give yourself to the trenches of organizing. But ultimately, I think like visioning, I'll just say is everyone's is everyone's birthright. Where a poet, where we might be a little bit more help, is we see more the nuances of reality. So, you know, really almost making bigger visions more specific, we might be suited for. And also, you know, kind of making a movement, you know, making a movement almost like mentality natural. You know, just like that, like it doesn't have to be. If a poet knows anything, it's that nothing really has to be grandiose. You know, so just kind of like, you know, bringing people to their, you know, really just helping bring people to their nature, and making movement more of a natural thing. We can also lend a hand there, but ultimately, I actually, you know, I try to stay away from that kind of prescription and just think, well, how competent am I in all of the facets of movement, not just kind of sitting in the imagination of it or being you know, we're not necessarily the imagination department in a revolution.
We're gonna try to ease out of this here and respect everybody's time. Tongo, your time, you know, very much appreciated here. You mentioned the public libraries, the sponsor here of the Poet Laureate program. Can you talk to us a little bit more just about reading and books and what the importance of that is? You know, I want to shout out, one of the things we do at SCORES is, you know, we do soccer and poetry and service learning programming. And at our soccer games, we bring books out to the field. We bring the libraries out to the field for our poet athletes to take home, to build their home libraries. We don't want the books back. We just want them to take them. But as a poet, as a thinker, I mean, just, you know, what is it about the library? What is it about reading? And I'm going to throw in all my last questions. Here's one from Angela. Like, what are you reading, or what are you know, what are some of the things that have really influenced you and who you are? In the book department.
It never ends, you know. Well, one, you know, I think that there's a kind of a beautiful justice to poetry in that, you know, it really is. It's like your cosmic book report, you know. If whatever, you know, whatever you subscribe to, you know, God, gods, the force, you know, whatever, the great unity of all things, you know, was to stand before you and say, what have you learned? The poem is the answer to that question in your poem. And so what's groovy is that you actually don't have to achieve anything. By the time you pick up the pen, it's really too late. Who you are, what you know, what you're going to bring to the human journey really is already set up. And therefore, you know, just learning the groovy justice of it is just like, the more you learn, actually, the more music you can make down on the page. So it's it's groovy. I usually give this John Coltrane anecdote, where a horn player asked him, "How do I become a better horn player?" And he said, "Become a better person." Again, all of this cultivation, that's that's what leads to your that's what your kind of assertion, your intellectual assertion is. But I've been working more with some of Coltrane's thoughts lately, and so I've come across more material, and he said that a musician is really just relaying the natural laws of the universe, and so all the all what you access expands your craft, and I think that goes for any craft, any discipline. The more you learn about other facets of reality, the more of these natures that you learn, then go into the go into the synthesis that is what you do. So I have a few kind of threads of inquiry going at all times. Right now I'm reading or I'm about to read Black Reconstruction by W.E.B. Du Bois, because it's interesting how I like this neo-Confederate tendency is interesting and has happened before, right? And I'm looking. I'm gonna go through Black Reconstruction to try to get some insight. I also have I've been on this physics kick for a while. I don't understand. I probably understand about 5% of what I read, but interestingly, just brushing up against it, I've actually gotten more ideas in how to teach, like kind of the mechanics of poetry. There's a lot that kind of, a lot of what scientists have discovered about the true nature of physical reality that actually can also be related to certain moves you can make on a page. I'm also reading right now. Now I forget his name. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like a sutra. It's what's it, like the sutra of Hey Mang or something like that. I don't know how to say it. But this cat was interesting. He's a Buddhist kind of lineage holder. Almost it's a legend though. And but he was illiterate, and so it's kind of like the adventures of a cat who came from a kind of a lower station, but was just basically just like everywhere he went, he was setting it on fire with wisdom. These type of things, man. I'm always looking for more. But like learning is actually the treat of life, to move beyond, because it's the ticket out of your box. Even when your box is groovy, we want to constantly be expanding our sense of all universes, social, political, natural, all of these things. It's funny because they all cooperate, actually, and they all give you they all give you insight. And if you when you look at all of the greats of everything they did, they were always working there were other interests they were working in there.
All right, Tongo. Well, we consider you one of the greats, and it's been our pleasure to listen to you. We could listen for hours and hours. It's hard to end the session when you've opened up so many thoughts and paths of inquiry here, but we're going to end it. where, and give you the last word here. Where can people hear more of you? You got some events coming up, National Poetry Month here. I think City Arts and Lecture is going to do something. Do you know, can you give us a couple places where we might hear more?
So there's going to be on the 21st of this month. Going to do the inauguration, you know, of the Poet Laureate thing. It's going to be great. I'm making it kind of collective. So there'll be other poets, including my brother, who will be performing. It's called an inauguration, but it's really like performance, and so that should be good. I think you can register for that at the library page. But hey, you know, I'm bad at that type of stuff. You know, but you can always tap in on Instagram. You know what I mean? I can give you an update there.
Yeah, we'll follow. We can follow you. All right. Well, again, it's been a pleasure and more to hear you. Can't thank you enough for being part of our Poetry Summit, for the sessions that you did participate in, and for this fitting conclusion. We began with a tribute to Lawrence Ferlinghetti, the first Poet Laureate, I believe, of San Francisco. We didn't get to talk much about him. That'll be another time. But here we started with the past. We're ending with the future, the present, and the future. You really opened our mind. We invite people to check out the replays, and we invite people to hear our young poet athletes. We're having an event on the 21st as well. It's a lunchtime event, so I don't think that's a conflict with the library event. But we'll be following up with some information on that to come hear some of these young voices here from the Scores Poet athletes. So again, thanks so much. I'm going to pull my finger out of the electric socket here and go meditate for the rest of the day, hopefully, on everything you've said. Beautiful, passionate. Thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Much love and appreciation.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you, Tongo.
Angela, you there?
Yeah, I'm removing.
Okay.